Today we're going to be looking at Stephane Ivanoff's Baby Blacephalon. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sable Eyes. I'm Mitch, and as I mentioned, we're going to be taking a look at Stephane Ivanoff's winning list from Bochum Regional Championships. He played Baby Blacephalon in that tournament, actually played against Baby Blacephalon. This is the greens version as opposed to the Pidgeotto version, which you've probably seen a bit of in the past. Nothing too much to explain for Baby Blacephalon. We have Blazer, 1 fire for 10, flip a prize card, and if it's a fire energy, we do an extra 50 damage. That can potentially take knockouts on 60 HP basics, as well as things like Jirachi due to weakness. It's a good attack in a pinch, so definitely worth considering. But the main feature for Baby Blacephalon is Fireball Circus, 3 fire energy, 50 times the amount of energy that you discard from your hand. So we're going to discard as many fire energy from our hand as possible to do as much damage as we can. We can very easily get up to some very high numbers with this. Discarding 6 energy, which is really easy to do, can get us a knockout on a big tag team like ADP or Mewtwo and Mew. So we have got lots of options to take big knockouts, but we're still going to be able to tangle with smaller decks as well. Fireball Circus really strong. We've got 4 copies of Baby Blacephalon in his list here. We also have a copy of Blacephalon GX, which used to be the go-to Blacephalon back in the early days. Bursting Burn for 1 means that your opponent's active is burned and confused. We also have Mind Blown, where we can attach 2 fire energy and do 50 times the amount of energy that we send to the Lost Zone from our field. This can be another good way of getting a big knockout in the late game. If you've got a Baby Blacephalon or 2 that are powered up, don't have energy in hand, you can play down a Blacephalon GX, use Mind Blown and do a huge amount of damage there. It's also really useful in that you can just play it down, attach an energy, and burst to take your last prize. So if you've been able to knock out an ADP, maybe you've been able to take a knockout on something like Keldeo as well, you can just play down this Blacephalon, burst GX, you've won the game. So those 2 attackers obviously are going to lose a lot of energy along the way. Victini Prism is going to give us a chance to get it back. We have 16 energy in this deck, so theoretically Victini can do 280 damage, which is going to be enough again to knock out ADP. Infinity, 2 fire, 20 times the amount of energy that are in your discard pile. With Blacephalon discarding energy from your hand, you're going to find that lots of your energy are in the bin at some point or another. Victini Prism will be able to get you across the line in those pinch situations. Moving on to the rest of the list, I mentioned it is a greens Baby Blacephalon list, so we have 4 copies of Greens Exploration. It's really good to find the things that you need to get started. This is kind of the consistency engine as opposed to the Pidgeotos that would appear in a traditional Baby Blacephalon list. We also play 4 copies of Welder. We need this card to power up our attackers, so as long as we've got Welder and a couple of fire energy, we should be able to easily power up as many Blacephalon as required. Stephane also chose to include a Rosa in the list, and I think this is a really good card for this list. To be able to search a deck for a Pokemon, a trainer, and a basic energy is sometimes all that Baby Blacephalon needs, and depending on the turn that you play Rosa, you could potentially use it to search for a Beast Ring, which could start powering up a new attacker for you. So Rosa, a really cool kind of semi-consistency supporter, something that can get you the things that you need when you need them. The rest of the items are all around energy, recursion, or consistency. We've got 4 copies of Acrobike to help burn through our deck as quickly as possible. Helps us put energy in the discard so that we can potentially attack with Victini, as well as pulling them all out with Fire Crystal. But mainly it just helps us get through our deck as quickly as possible. Same thing for 4 copies of Pokegear. We're going to use this card to try and find Welders and Greens as quickly as we can. Greens is really strong on turn 1, so whilst we can still play supporters on turn 1, we have to be able to use it. Pokegear is going to help us find Greens most of the time if we haven't already got one in hand. We also play 4 copies of Custom Catcher. This is the Gust for the deck. Usually you only ever need to Gust 2 Pokemon, so Custom Catcher is perfectly acceptable. And since we're running greens, we're going to be able to find them whenever we need them. So Custom Catcher is super strong. Of course, we can use this to get out of a pinch to draw a few extra cards. One of the things that Baby Blacephalon does struggle with is getting stamped in the late game. So Custom Catcher could potentially get you out of one of those situations where you've only got 1 or 2 cards in hand. Custom Catcher could be the answer there. We also have 1 copy of Cherish Ball to help us find Blacephalon GX. We can just play greens, Cherish Ball, find the Blacephalon, attach and win the game with Burst GX, so that's why that Cherish Ball is there. We also have, 3 cards that are going to help us find energy. The first one is going to be 4 copies of Fiery Flint. This is the way we're going to suck energy out of the deck and put it into our hand. So Fiery Flint will discard 2 cards from our hand, put 4 energy from the deck into our hand, and that's 200 damage for a Baby Blacephalon. We also have access to 4 Fire Crystal as well, so we could potentially discard 2 of those Fire Energy and utilize them later. We can grab the Fire Crystal out of the deck with greens and grab 3 Fire Energy from the discard and have absolutely no problem recurring that energy around. In the early game, you want Fiery Flint. In the late game, you want Fire Crystal. Obviously, there's a bit of flexibility either way. And Fire Crystal, since it's in such a high count, it means that you can sometimes just discard energy as your cost for things like Fiery Flint. Doesn't necessarily matter. You can get it back with Fire Crystal. One of the good things about the greens version of this deck is that we are able to play 2 copies of Beast Ring. Beast Ring means that you don't have to find Welder every turn. That is the critical piece of information here. We don't have to have Welder every single turn. Eventually our opponent is going to knock out 2 Baby Blacephalons or even just 1 Blacephalon GX, and we're going to be able to Beast Ring. So as long as we can keep ourselves kind of limited in the amount of prizes that our opponent takes, and they can't skip our Beast Ring turn, we're going to be able to use it. We're going to search out 2 energy from the deck and attach them to whichever Blacephalon we like, and it means that we can use greens to search it out, or we can use Welder to power up another Blacephalon before we need to start worrying about resources in the late game. So Beast Ring, a really, really strong card, and a 2 of in this deck. We've got 1 copy of Reset Stamp. We're not super worried about discarding it because obviously we don't have any discard options that are forcing us to remove the card. We want to keep this card for as long as we can, because if we find ourselves in a position where we need a couple of extra turns, we might be able to play Reset Stamp to slow our opponent down in the mid to late game. We also play 1 copy of Switch. There's not a huge amount of maneuverability required for this deck. Usually you're just going to stick your attacker in the active and go from there, but sometimes you can get yourself in a sticky situation where the Blacephalon that you have in the active isn't the one that you want to be attacking with. Maybe it doesn't have the energy, they've gusted it up to try and stall you. 1 copy of Switch is going to solve that problem for you. You'll be able to take a knockout, and usually if they're stalling you and you get out of the stall, then you're going to go on to win the game. So Switch is a good option, just the 1 of here. And we also have 4 stadiums, 1 copy of Heat Factory Prism. Again, we can discard Fire Energy and then draw 3 cards. It's going to give us a turn or so of extra draw. Don't be surprised if this one disappears quickly though. And more importantly, we have 3 copies of Ultra Space. Ultra Space searches out 5 of the 6 Pokemon in this deck, and it is rarely useful for other lists. So we can play this down, search out a Baby Blacephalon or a Blacephalon GX, stick it on the bench, start powering it up, and usually our opponent isn't going to get a huge amount of value out of it. As opposed to things like Viridian Forest, which obviously we'd be able to utilize to get energy in our hand, and our opponent is going to be able to use that as well. So Ultra Space, by far the best stadium of choice, and if it stays in play for more than 1 turn, you're going to be in a really strong position with multiple attackers ready to go. Finally, we have a ton of Fire Energy. 16 in this deck, like I mentioned before. It means that you're going to have no problem finding energy to attach to your attackers, and you're also potentially going to be able to get a big knockout with Victini Prism to end the game. So the deck is very simple, very streamlined. There's lots of 4 counts, lots of consistent draw and lots of consistent energy acceleration. It's just a matter of seeing how it goes in gameplay. If you want, you can definitely go and check out the final of that regionals. It should be over on the Limitless YouTube channel. You can check that out there to see the deck in action in the tournament being piloted by Stephane. But I've provided a game for you, so hopefully it's enjoyable, and we'll see how this one goes up against, I think it's Malamar. Okay, here we go. We've got the coin flip. I'm going to pick Tails, and Tails it is, so we'll be going first. This game is up against Malamar. This is a pre-recorded game, so I've seen this one before, and hopefully it's an entertaining one that shows off how this deck works. Now, we are going up against a pretty rough matchup here. Malamar is traditionally the one prize king, so hopefully we are able to get a bit of luck, and we see we have got some in that they've started with Mimikyu. Obviously, they can just attach an escape board and retreat, but it's not going to be easy for them to start setting themselves up. We've got a couple of acro bikes to get going here. I've not got a huge amount going for me in my hand, but I've managed to find an energy there, so I could potentially welder or just heat factory that away. I get a bit lucky in that I find another welder, but more importantly, I've got a fire energy off of that particular draw. So the question becomes, what am I going to do? This fiery flint, I'm going to discard the fire energy, and I think I'm going to get rid of the ultra space as well. What I really should have done is I should have got rid of that cherish ball that I played at the very start of the game. That was a bit of an error. That could have just easily been a discard for these energies, but that's okay. It's hot in Australia at the moment, so I'll use that as an excuse. We've got 2 energy on a Blacephalon. We've got a hand that is full of cards that we are looking forward to playing next turn. We've got Welder, we've got Fire Crystal. We're going to be able to take a knockout. It's just a matter of how our opponent goes about their game plan. Now, normally, as a Blacephalon player up against Malamar, I'd be hoping that they just completely brick. We're in a good position in that they've got a Mimikyu in the active, so like I mentioned before, they're going to need to get that out of there. But at the moment, the fact that they're playing down Inkay is not particularly comforting for me. It means they're probably going to be able to get themselves going. There's a spell tag on the Mimikyu as well, so I need to be careful about taking a knockout there. That 40 damage realistically could come up, and a Viridian Forest coming down, which will be a good thing for us. It means we can start accelerating the amount of fire energy that we have to play with. It just means I'm a little bit disappointed that I got rid of the Ultra Space. But hey, that's okay. I'm going to Giratina here, they'll attach, and then Cynthia, so this looks like a reasonably good turn for Malamar. It's not the best one, they could have played Lily there, but double Inkay, Giratina and attachment, that's pretty much all you could ask for, and they've managed to do that without even playing down a Jirachi, so pretty strong. They're getting rid of the Great Catch if they don't think they're going to need it off of that Acro Bike, and now they do have a Jirachi, so potentially next turn they could utilize that. Now, I've top decked greens here, so this is a really interesting turn. I'm thinking that it might actually be worth using that greens. First, I'll discard an energy and then then grab one out of the deck. But I'm actually thinking here that it might be worth investing in a couple of pieces. I'm looking at Ultra Space and Green's Exploration. What I'm thinking of is I might need to get another attacker, right? So what I want to do is I want to use Ultra Space to get myself a Baby Blacephalon. I'm going to grab another Green's Exploration so that next turn I can use what I've got to get myself going. I've got an Ultra Space here. I'll grab Blacephalon. There's only 2 in deck, so that's a bit of an issue for us. But that's okay. I've got an attachment down on the Baby Blacephalon, and with a bit of luck, hopefully, I can get an energy off of the prizes with Burst GX. The really strong thing here is, not only do I get to take a prize and potentially attach an energy, and luckily we flip a fire energy, so I get to attach that to Baby Blacephalon, but more importantly, our opponent is stuck with that Mimikyu in the active. So even if they are able to get that Giratina powered up, they will need to get the Mimikyu out somehow. And with 4 cards in hand, I'm not expecting them to be able to pull off a perfect play. So they still could get there, but I mean, they'd need a couple of cards to get themselves going. I reckon what they're probably going to be looking at doing here is trying to get themselves their board set up with Malamar's. Hopefully they can get their energy attached to Giratina and come in ready to take a hit for 130. But at the moment, there's not a huge amount that I'm afraid of, especially if they don't utilize any of the switch mechanics. We've got an energy spinner here, which they're going to use to find an energy to attach to Giratina, and they've only got one card left. It's not a supporter, so I am feeling pretty good here. I'm going to use that Ultra Space, grab myself my last Blacephalon. My opponent doesn't need to know that that's my last one. I've actually got a custom catcher in hand here, and I think that the best route of play, since they've only got one card in hand, is to utilize custom catcher in order to take a knockout on Malamar. Now, it's not necessarily the smartest move in the world, but it could potentially help slow their momentum down. It might have been worth just taking a knockout on the Jirachi, because it means that they can't just utilize their Jirachi to find a supporter next turn. And in hindsight, I'd probably say that that's a better play, but at the moment I'm thinking that Malamar is pretty strong. It depends if my opponent's willing to promote the Jirachi, then they've still got to find that switch mechanic. So I'm going to put 2 fire energy from my active into the lost zone in order to take a knockout on this Malamar. I managed to unprize an Acro Bike, which isn't the end of the world, but my opponent is in a really poor position now. They've got a powered attacker, yes, but they don't have any Malamars in play, and they don't have a way to switch their Jirachi. So in the end, my opponent chooses not to promote Jirachi, instead goes just for the Giratina. So preferencing the damage from that Giratina over anything else. And this is, again, a really good thing for me, but they do manage to find Baby Blacephalon off of the Ultra Space. So like I was talking about in the deck profile, sometimes it's not useful, but in this particular instance it is. A spell tag goes down on that Blacephalon, and Rosa, which looks like it might have been the card that they got off of the top deck, manages to find them a trainer, an energy, and a Pokemon. So that'll probably be a Malamar, a basic Psychic, and possibly a supporter for next turn, although it could even be a escape board in order to get Jirachi into the active with no problems. So it'll be interesting to see what they go with. The attachment will probably go down onto that Blacephalon, ready to start doing some damage. My opponent knows that I'm probably going to be on 3 prizes next turn, so it might be worth it. It looks like they're going for Mysterious Treasure here, so might be prioritizing an extra Inkay instead of finding the Jirachi next turn, which is fair enough, because you can still get what you need off of a Jirachi. So Mysterious Treasure's away the Psychic Energy, and it looks like another Inkay will be coming into play. And that means that there will only be 1 energy on Blacephalon this turn. They might need to find one next turn in this instance now that they've not attached one. So again, my opponent with a 0 card hand, but they've got everything that they need realistically, and they attack for 130 damage. Now, I'm feeling pretty solid here. This is a pretty good turn for me, and especially when my opponent puts 40 damage onto the Giratina, I'm feeling chuffed. Now, that means I only need to Lost Zone 2 energy from this Blacephalon in order to take a knockout. So, I'm feeling really, really strong. We'll play a few of these cards down. I've got an Acro Bike here. I'm going to grab the Fire Crystal. I've already got an Ultra Space in play, plus I know that there are no more Pokemon in the deck for me to search for, so no point to grab that. I've got double Beast Ring in hand, I've got plenty of Fire Crystals, so when I start attacking with Baby Blacephalon, I'm going to be A-OK. And I managed to find a Switch, a Rosa, and a Pokegear off of that Welder. None of them particularly useful now, but potentially next turn, if my opponent does take a knockout on this Blacephalon, those Beast Rings are going to come up really big. Now, this is a really awkward situation here, because obviously I don't want to take the spell tag damage really, but I know that my opponent is going to put probably most of them on my active Blacephalon and some on the bench, and try and take a knockout with Blacephalon, Baby Blacephalon on the bench. So I kind of spread my energy out here just to force them to take a knockout on the Baby Blacephalon on the bench with the most energy. I guess it's not the end of the world. I know that I've got a response if they make that play, because I've got double Beast Ring. But the big problem for me with this play is that if they do manage to take knockouts on both Blacephalons, then I'm only 1 attacker I've only got one attacker in play, so I might have to search out Victini if I don't get what I need. There's the Malamar putting the energy onto the Baby Blacephalon, and just an energy from hand for Jirachi, so a free, well, not a free retreat, but a retreat nonetheless into Blacephalon, and now we'll be seeing Fireworks Bomb for 120. But not before Giratina comes down and makes that maths really nice. Put 40 damage onto Blacephalon GX in the active to knock it out, and then the rest onto the Blacephalon with 2 energy. That will do the job. So now we are in a really awkward position where I could very easily just lose the game. I need to get an attacker in play. I probably should use Rosa, but from memory I don't. So that's a bit of a misplay here. I think what I actually do go for is a Greens of some description, or maybe even a Welder, but probably should have just used the Beast Rings here and then Rosa to find the next Pokemon. But in my head I'm going, well, I need to unprize a Blacephalon and then live a turn. Was a mistake. That's a big mistake, but you know, that's okay. It's fine to make errors sometimes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reset Stamp and shuffle their hand, give them 3 more cards. I figure that their prizes are probably good because they've not had a huge amount to do, so I don't want to leave them with what they've got. I'd rather they have to kind of force their way into a new good hand off of a Stamp. They very easily could, but I'm going to make it happen. Fireball Circus now, and I'm holding my breath hoping that my opponent doesn't find an energy to attach this turn. I unprize a Baby Blacephalon, so if I am able to live for 1 more turn, then I will be a-okay. But you can see here, if I had have used Rosa and Beast Ring, then I would have been fine, because I would have had Welder in hand, I would have had all the energy. That's a big old misplay, and I probably deserve to lose the game because of it. But my opponent still needs to find energy, so it's just a matter of him playing down Viridian Forest, finding an energy, or playing an energy spinner. He's already played 1, and then the game will be his. He'll be able to take a knockout from the energy attachment and the double Malamar play. So Jirachi here grabs a Mysterious Treasure. Mysterious Treasure, not really helpful in this situation, but will grab... Well, actually, very helpful, sorry. He's only got 1 Malamar in play, so needs to discard 1. It's just a matter of him trying to figure out here what his best play is. Mysterious Treasure comes down, discards an Energy Spinner, which is a bit interesting. Obviously, there's an energy in hand, you would imagine, to be discarding Energy Spinner there. Plays down the Malamar, unless of course it was a mistake, and Cynthia coming out here, so our opponent just kind of not winning the game that turn. Probably deserved to. Obviously, I should have Victini down, so it shouldn't be a position where our opponent can win, but that's okay. Our opponent doesn't look like they've got energy here. Just checking here, they've got 5 in the discard, so you'd think that there'd probably be some somewhere, but they don't appear to have them. Pokemon Communication is going to shuffle Garchomp and Giratina into the deck. That's a card that has been seeing a fair bit of play in Malamar lists over the last few weeks, so definitely on the lookout for those if you do play against Malamar. Not particularly strong in this matchup, but still worth knowing about. Pokemon Communication Search taking a while here. My opponent probably realising that they should have just won the game. Ooh, whoops, but hey, that's 1 misplay each. I think that's fair. I should have got the Victini down. They should have just won then, but hey, it's not a big deal. Here comes the Psychic Recharge, so they are going to be able to put 2 energy on that Giratina for sure. So they are no doubt going to be attacking next turn, but by next turn it is going to be too late. Another Jirachi coming down, so looks like a retreat into that, and another Stellar Wish, hoping to find, I guess, another Energy Spinner, but I doubt there's going to be more than 2 in a list like this. Plus they'd need to find Switch now as well. A Skateboard isn't going to do the job because they've already retreated, and it might be time for them to just click done. That's the end of the turn, so unfortunate for them, and now I'm going to be able to play down this Blacephalon and use Beast Ring on it twice. Again, this probably should have happened last turn. I probably should have been attaching to a Victini, but that's okay. I'm now in a position where I probably can't lose the game unless I get stamped and my hand becomes absolute utter trash. I'm going to play a couple of Pokegear here. maybe just the one, I'm not sure. It's always awkward in these situations. You want to thin down your deck to as low as it can go. At the moment, I've got 8 cards in deck. You can't see that because my face is in the way. So I'm kind of in a position where I want to just get as many good cards into my deck as possible so that I give myself the best chance of drawing into them. I'm going to greens, grab myself a couple of cards maybe. I don't really want to take Fiery Flint. I'd rather those be in the deck. So I grabbed Custom Catcher here. In the end, I probably don't even need to play them. In the end, I probably should play them, but I don't need to. I just gotta hope that my opponent doesn't stamp me regardless. I'll just Fireball Circus and discard 1 energy here, and that'll take a knockout on the Jirachi. And now I'm just in a position where, as long as my opponent doesn't stamp me, I will win the game. And from memory, their stamp is already gone from the deck. So it's a bit of an interesting game. A little misplay here or there from both of us, but it's evened out. And the fact that Blacephalon went first and attacked first meant that Blacephalon is going to take this game, you'd think, unless something goes horribly wrong. Jirachi here in the active, but it's taking a bit of time. From memory, I think my opponent just lets his time run out and the turn passes across to me. So I think this is going to be the end. In hindsight, a bit of retrospective for you. I didn't play well this game, but I could have played much better. I think if I used that Rosa on the turn that we were talking about before, where I used the Welder instead, not only would I have been able to get an attacker in Blacephalon into play, but I'd also have a Victini ready to go with an attachment on it, so I'd be able to just manually attach once. I wouldn't need to find the welder. Again, in the late game, I probably could have played those custom catches in order to give myself a better chance to win, but wasn't to be in the end. My opponent's still looking through his deck here. Nothing particularly interesting on offer, and that is the game. Concession going his way, and now on to a little bit of review. So there you have it. Can't believe we managed to sneak a win against Malamar, but we, with a bit of luck, managed to get there. Our opponent obviously threw away the game there, which is disappointing, but it goes to show that if you are able to force Malamar to miss for a turn, then you are definitely capable of winning. This deck has lots of good matchups, and that one was its worst one, so it's winnable, and you just got to hope for the best. If you've got any tournaments coming up over the next few weeks before Melbourne International Championships, then this deck is definitely worth a look at, especially if you're expecting lots of big tag teams. You're going to be able to easily take knockouts on those. Thanks everyone for coming along and watching this video. If you're interested in subscribing, there'll be a button up here that you can click on. Over here will be some videos that you might like to check out, and if you're on Facebook or Twitter, then please follow on the SableEyes_YT, where you'll see every video as they appear. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you all next time for more from the Sable Eyes. Bye.